Good afternoon, and welcome to the Engineering Talent Awards nominee interviews. This is a series of webinar interviews led by myself and Fayon Dixon in discussion with those who have been nominated at this year's awards. The Engineering Talent Awards are hosted by Equal Engineers. Equal Engineers are an organisation focused on improving the diversity and inclusion of the engineering industry. The awards were, of course, scheduled to take place in April, but due to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, are now scheduled to take place in the future. A link to this and all the webinars in the series will be available for sharing once each is complete. In today's webinar, I'm here talking to Floriane Fidegnon-Edoh, who is nominated for Engineering Student of the Year. Floriane's nominator says, Floriane uses her drive and passion for engineering to inspire others. Several years ago, she was introduced to a major global grant giver, and after she explained her CREST project and why it mattered to her, they went on to make a significant investment into the scheme. Floriane has energized and mobilized many others in the CREST scheme and beyond, and was a wonderful role model while on the CREST youth panel. Quite praise. Welcome, Floriane.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Excellent. Is it raining where you are? It's been horrible here.
Yeah, it's been pretty horrible here too.
Well, a good day to be indoors then doing a nice dry webinar.
Definitely, of course.
Well, in which case, if you are ready, I will jump straight in with some questions.
Sure.
What is it that you do as an engineering student on a day-to-day basis?
So I'm a third year manufacturing mechanical engineering student at the University of Warwick. So at the base of it, manufacturing engineering is looking at how we can create and produce the products that we design. So day to day, I'll be going to lectures in the morning and then have a quick lunch break. And then in the afternoons, I usually have a seminar or a lab where we'll be doing some practical work and applying some of the knowledge that we've learned in the lectures. And then any extracurriculars that I have, I tend to do in the evenings when everything is done. Yeah, and then usually in the evenings, if I can, I try to hang out with friends and just relax.
Very important to unwind, especially at the moment. Just on that, how has studying been remotely? Have you been able to go into lectures and things, or have you been doing it all distance?
So we've been doing it distance, just trying to get all the assignments and exams out of the way, which I finished on Friday, which is great.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. So it's been good. Like, we've had the support from the university, and I've just been trying to make sure the quality of work is still the same, even though the circumstances are quite extraordinary.
Of course.
But at the end of it all, like, it's work that I enjoy doing, so it's never too much of a chore.
Fantastic. Well, they say if you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. The practical work, you're saying that sometimes in the afternoon you put things into practice. I mean, is that your favourite part? Because I think certainly for me at school, anything that was practical was always my favourite.
Definitely, I was the same. I think most of the time when we get to be in the labs, sometimes it'll be doing a bit of computer-aided drawing or computer-aided manufacture. Sometimes we'll be hands-on trying to build things. Those are the sessions that I really enjoy. Those are pretty fun, and usually they're in groups. So I like working with the people in my course.
Amazing. So was this always an industry that interested you?
Not at first. So at first, I actually initially wanted to become a lawyer. So I was really interested in international law and how sort of we govern across different countries. And then I kind of got into engineering through my design and technology department, so my DT teachers, and they saw the value in sort of extracurricular practical projects. So I did one with Practical Action, and we competed at the National Science and Engineering competition. And through that, I got to meet STEM ambassadors who looked like me, who were doing STEM careers and STEM subjects. And that's what really inspired me, because I could see it was an industry where you could be creative, problem solve, use your physics and maths to kind of produce products that are tangible, and like you're building solutions to some of the biggest problems in the world. And I think that's what kind of inspired me into engineering, I think, yeah.
Wow, you put that really, really well. I mean, I sort of course, the desire to solve problems, I think, is probably in all of us, but obviously not everybody goes on to being an engineer. So it's great. And you made it sound as if the extracurricular sort of side of things was really what pushed it over the edge for you, which is really interesting to hear, actually. I mean, would you say that that was really a big factor, the extracurricular?
Definitely. I think the biggest thing is that it's really difficult with the current curriculum that we have for young people to really understand what careers in STEM might be. It's quite easy to say what a doctor is or what a firefighter is or what a teacher is, because you see that in day-to-day culture. I think for engineers, biomedical scientists, mathematicians, physicists, those aren't necessarily careers that are out there. So I think the extracurriculars helped me to realize that there was so many opportunities within the STEM industry. And I guess just being able to work on something and see it go from sort of conception all the way down to execution was a really big thing for me, because we had this idea in our mind that sounded really far-fetched, and after the course of like a year of after school sessions, we had this model of a greenhouse, which was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, so I definitely think extracurricular projects have a huge impact.
Excellent. Great. This next one is quite a big question that I ask everybody, so feel free to answer in whatever way this question, whatever it means to you. Have you ever had to overcome adversity? And if so, can you explain?
Yeah, I think in a couple of ways. The path towards engineering hasn't always been as straightforward. I guess when I was younger, there were times when I doubt myself because I was always in the minority of people in the room. And that was always something that, you have to kind of build confidence in yourself. But I guess more recently, I ended up having to have emergency surgery in December, which was really random. So I was fine one day, and then the next, I kind of wasn't so great. And so that kind of put things into perspective for me that, to do your best at the things you love, you have to look after yourself. So I never expected to be in the position that I was in December, but after that period of recovery, because I really took the time to understand that, like, looking after yourself and resting and giving yourself a break from work puts you in the best position to succeed. I guess that's what helped me after that. And then I guess 2 months later, I was back to normal, running conferences, going to talks, and like doing university at the same time. But yeah, it was a big shock at the time, but I've learned a lot from it. And I think if you do what you love, you'll always have the fuel and the passion to get through the difficult times.
That's really inspirational. So glad to hear that you're sort of feeling better and getting back on with things. But to take such a strong message from something like that so quickly is very, very impressive. And I love what you said about the self-care, because I think we often miss that, especially when we're young and especially when we're in such a hurry to succeed. I trained to be a dancer myself, and you're so desperate to get on and get out there and to do the best that really often you don't look after yourself at all. And of course, as you said quite rightly, then that is going to eventually catch up with the thing that you're sacrificing your health for. So it's a road to nowhere. So I think that's very important. So you were nominated for these awards. How does that feel?
For me, I feel really honoured. I guess like the work that I do, you never do it for the recognition, but to know that it's appreciated and that it's having an impact, and that I can spread this message across a wider platform is something that's really, really important to me. And to look at all the other nominees and the amazing things they're doing, and to know that like someone considers me on par with them is kind of mind-blowing in some ways. And I guess like I'm just really looking forward to getting to know the other nominees, and hopefully we can bring about change and in a positive way. And I think in times like these, it's really important to spotlight people, to kind of bring that good news feeling. But yeah, I was kind of shocked when I got the email, but I'm really, really happy, definitely.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. You're incredibly deserving. And I think what you said there about hearing bits of positivity and good news, especially at the moment, is something that we all need. I don't know about you, but every time a good news story comes up, I cling to it at the moment.
Yes.
Yes, it's a good way to see us through. So you've done a lot with science communicating and policy advising. How did you get into that, and has it been rewarding?
It's definitely been rewarding. I got into it by chance, kind of. So I joined a couple of youth panels during my time at school, and then that kind of snowballed into attending conferences and speaking at different events, and then attending roundtables and discussions where we're talking about policy, especially diversity in STEM, and how institutes such as the IET, the Royal Society, can become more diverse. And I think it's a testament to them that they were actively working to have more diverse people in the room around talking about those topics, to have them represented. And so for me, that was really important, that I could represent people like me who may not have ever got into STEM if they hadn't been involved in the projects that they had been. And I guess with the science communication, it can be, I think STEM can sometimes be misunderstood in society, and I think science communicators are a really important way for us to get science across to the larger society and the wider population, and get them to understand that maths may be difficult, but it's literally embedded in everything we do day to day. And so, you know, the technologies that we think are too far out or too difficult for us to understand can actually be simplified into a language that's understandable for all. And I think that accessibility is necessary for diversity and inclusion, and just for people to understand like where our technology is coming from, and what STEM is doing and how it's impacting our day-to-day lives.
Amazing. Somebody said, and I'm afraid I don't know who the quote is, but they liked maths because it was the same in every language. And there was a little bit of that in what you just said there, which I thought was lovely. And just to tie in with that, and something that you mentioned a little bit earlier, you said, I believe it was when you started doing some of the extracurricular activity, that you saw other people in STEM that looked like you. How important was that to have that, you know, as a realization that this is easily something you could achieve yourself?
I think it was pretty important, like, because when you think of the famous scientists and you've got Einstein in your mind and Feynman and all of these amazing people, and their work has always inspired me, and they're reading their books and hearing how they developed their STEM knowledge is always something that's really inspiring. But for the longest time, there's always a little bit of doubt, and you kind of think, oh, I'm just someone from East London, I don't know anyone who does engineering in my family or in my community. Is this something I can be successful in? And I think meeting STEM ambassadors who had similar backgrounds, who were doing amazing work, gave me that confidence to be like, yeah, I definitely can do this. You know, and maybe I might be the only girl in the room, but that doesn't mean I can't do what everybody else is doing. And they kind of inspire that confidence for me. So like, I keep in touch with a lot of the mentors and the people who've inspired me, and even to this day, I've always got to thank them, because I don't think I'd be here without them.
That's brilliant. I love that you keep in contact with them. You have been researching into Industry 4.0 technologies and how they will transform engineering. How has that been?
It's been fun. I'm a nerd. Like I'll
It sounds huge.
defo.
I'll need some explanation on this one for sure.
So Industry 4.0 technologies is kind of a term that describes modern technology and how that might change the face of sort of engineering. So it could be the Internet of Things when we talk about smart devices, so like smart fridges, smart watches. It could be artificial intelligence, machine learning. It could be big data, which is literally just lots and lots of data. And it could be different types of manufacturing techniques. So like 3D printing is a part of additive manufacturing, which is like a wider part of sort of smart manufacturing techniques that are coming about. So for the longest time, all of these technologies have been, they've kind of been in the background in research, and now we're starting to find that they're becoming commercially viable. And so we can start bringing them into our day-to-day lives and techniques. And so I'm just really interested to see how, in the future, when we've got self-driving cars, will people own cars? That's the kind of question. Like, will everyone just Uber in cars that drive us without us having to do anything?
Wow, yeah.
Or the idea that you can control everything in your house, from the heating to the cooker to the washing machine, from the touch of a button on your phone. So for me, I'm quite interested in sort of how our lives will look different, but also how do we police it? How do we make sure the policies in place to make sure this technology is accessible to everyone, and that they're not detrimental to quality of life and for all people and for the entire population? So it's been cool to see it popping up in different parts of my research, my dissertation in policy work. So yeah,
Amazing. Do you find in general there is a sudden explosion the minute a piece of technology becomes commercially viable? I'm assuming there's suddenly a lot more work on it because suddenly it's, you know, something that could be saleable in a commercial market. Do these things sort of creep along and then suddenly explode at a certain point?
Yeah, because I remember being 15 and going to a 3D printing exhibition that my DT teachers took me to. And we were just all fascinated by these huge 3D printers that could print out a tiny thing this big in about 7-8 hours. And the printer itself cost thousands and thousands. And now you can buy a build your own 3D printing pack and build visors for the NHS. So in that period of kind of 6 years where like technology has kind of developed into something we could have never imagined, but it's doing good. And I think you can see that from current events and the 3D printing of PPE for the NHS. I think that shows the value of the future of technology and what it might bring. And we can't really predict what it might do in the next 20 years, but I'm hoping it's good work. And I hope there's a lot of people,
and scary.
Yeah, because you still got to think, are we going to have a robot takeover?
Robot apocalypse. I've got to say, I always argue that is my most logical solution. I think long before we get hit by an asteroid or anything. Although I've got to say, the odds on pandemic has gone up. But I always think there was a thing online, wasn't there, where somebody got an Alexa for Christmas and the Google one, whatever it's called. I have neither of them. And they asked the Google one, oh, you know, what do you like about Alexa? And it said, oh, you know, I like her blue light. Then Alexa across the room turns on and says, thank you. See, I find that terrifying.
Yeah. And I think it's going to take us time to get used to the technology and to trust it and to trust the people who manufacture it.
Yes.
But the possibilities are endless. And I think that's what's really exciting.
It's very exciting. And when you were talking just then about the self-driving cars and would anyone even own a car, you know, these thoughts have never crossed my mind. So instantly I'm like, oh, what else? So it's fascinating. So tell me a bit about your work for the Women's Engineering Society and all of this STEM outreach that you've done, because it sounds like there's quite a lot.
Yeah, so very quickly after getting into STEM, I realised, you know, the door had been pushed open for a little bit for me, but what I wanted to really do is to bring those opportunities to other people from my community. So I started sort of running workshops with different companies. So I was a workshop facilitator for a while with a tech company who were focused in creating games for young people to get them into STEM. And then that's kind of always traveled through. And so I've been a STEM ambassador for quite a while now. And then with the Women's Engineering Society, I got to university and I wanted there to be a student-led diversity in STEM group. So it was important to me that there was a safe space for people who felt they might not be represented, for them to develop their career skills, to get to know other people, to look after their well-being. So the Women's Engineering Society was set up specifically at Warwick, but there's loads of them across the UK in different universities. And the wider UK organisation does a lot of work as well. And so we kind of run events based on like career progression for current university students, but we also go into primary schools and secondary schools and we teach them about what engineering is. We give them activities to do. So like the marshmallow towers with the spaghetti is always a good one.
I bet that's
that goes down well. We do have to struggle sometimes to get them to not eat the marshmallows. But the value of the sessions are there, and you can see that when young people engage with STEM ambassadors throughout their time at school, they're more likely to consider the opportunities there are in the STEM industry, particularly in engineering. So training other volunteers to go out into primary schools to do the same has been quite rewarding. And in general, we are just looking to hopefully inspire more young people into STEM. And it's not a difficult task. There's loads of ways for young professionals and for people in STEM to become STEM ambassadors and to go into their local schools and run pretty much any activity, anything related to STEM. So it's been a good journey to see some of the people that I mentored 4 or 5 years ago who are now at university studying a STEM related degree. Like, that gives me a lot of hope.
That's great. I mean, I think it says a lot about people who, you know, not just get through the door themselves, but try to widen that door for other people, you know. And there's a lot of nominees, you know, at these awards that are doing similar things. I think it's great. You know, it's one thing to make it up the ladder, but, you know, can you help others behind you, I think is always very, very admirable, especially if you've had help yourself. So would you explain to me what the CREST scheme is and how it helped you? Because I mentioned it a couple of times in your introduction, and yeah, I should probably get an idea of what it is.
Yeah, so with that extracurricular project that I did, one of the great things is that I ran, we kind of completed a CREST Award. So CREST Awards are run by the British Science Association, and there are, I think now there are 5 different stages. So you can do gold, silver, bronze, and then there's discovery, and then another level for younger kids. And the idea is that you can take an idea or project and explore it by yourself. So it's quite an independent thing. And you learn how to write a research report, you learn how to develop the soft skills necessary to become someone in STEM, you practice practical skills. And what's great about it is you can do it in science, you can do it in technology, you can do it in maths, you can do it in engineering. And those projects usually run over a course of a couple of weeks, depending on the level. So gold is usually for 16 plus, whereas bronze might be for key stage 3, so secondary school students. And so the value of that is that we competed in the competition, and I had this tangible report that kind of ticked off the boxes of what I might need in a research report or what I might need in a design report. And I think that gave me a head start in the sense that I suddenly had these skills that I still use now, and I've had so much longer to practice with them. And so the work that the British Science Association do is they try to make science more accessible to the wider population. I think this is a really good way that they do that for young people. And kind of the value of it is that recent reports and research that they've done have shown that 21% of those who go into doing a CREST project are then more likely to study a STEM subject at AS level. And so I'm kind of a physical representation of that statistics, because if I hadn't done that CREST project, I probably wouldn't have done STEM subjects at A level. And there are so many schemes like it that I think we kind of need to open the platform for, to inform young people that, you know, if you're not sure about STEM, try this project out and see what happens. Maybe you'll love it. I think that's the value of it. So I can't, yeah, I'm always singing praise about the CREST projects, but I love them. I think everyone should do one.
Good.
Definitely research, but yeah, the British Science Association, that's their work.
I think it's fascinating that you said, I think, was it 20% you said, more likely to go on to study STEM subject at AS level? I mean, that's actually quite a big statistic. That's really tangible. I love it. So what would you say to other potential STEM students? I know this is a big question because, of course, you know, many different types of personalities, but in general, if you could give some advice to people that are thinking, that are on that, you know, knife edge of do I, don't I?
Yeah. I think I've got 3 things. I think I definitely look after yourself and take a break. And sometimes it can feel that like you have to work at 100% all the time, 5,000 miles an hour to get where you need to be. And actually, looking after yourself is the most important thing to becoming successful. I think secondly, where you can, say yes to the opportunities that are offered to you. So I think there have been loads of times where someone has asked me to do something, or it might be a talk, it might be a panel, and I'll feel really underqualified and I just think, I can't do this, I just can't. And I've had to have my mentors or my DT teachers be like, no, you go and do that and see what happens. And then that's kind of snowballed into other opportunities. So I do think saying yes and challenging yourself is really important. And I guess there's also the fact that there is no sort of high and dry path into STEM. So if you choose different A levels and then you kind of decide you want to become an engineer, there are other ways to become an engineer. There are other ways to become a biophysicist. And you know, university is not the be all and end all. There are degree apprenticeships, there's BTEC, there's work placements. There's so many opportunities out there. And I think it's really important for young people to explore those and see what suits them best. And I think that's really important, because once you find the path that works for you, you're more likely to stay on and enjoy what you're doing. But yeah, definitely, that's my 3 tips.
I think the thing about paths is definitely true. You know, people can be so intimidated by the traditional university route, perhaps. And another thing you mentioned at the beginning, which I think is true in so much of life, that sort of feeling of almost imposter syndrome, like, well, why would they ask me? And I think a lot of people are experience that a lot of the time, and often I think it's the most qualified people. It's funny, isn't it, the way the world works? But yeah, I think that's a really key thing to say to sort of, especially young people. I think most adults go through those feelings of insecurity. When I started my job, I was absolutely terrified. It's normal.
Yeah.
Just to flag to anybody watching as well, if you have any questions you'd like me to put to Floriane, there is a Q&A thing at the bottom of your screen, so please do submit those. But since we were talking about you saying, or when I've been asked to speak at things, you gave a keynote speech at the Grand Challenges Conference hosted by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. What was it that you were speaking about in your speech?
So I was the youth keynote speaker for the Grand Challenges Conference, which is an annual conference hosted by the foundation where they bring together the best of academics and industry professionals to discuss some of the largest global issues that we're facing. So that could be agricultural issues, it could be disease and infection, now even more topical than before, vaccines and coronavirus and things like that. And they discuss the research and the work that they've been doing. So when that conference was launched, the British Science Association ran a youth grand challenges competition. So that was an opportunity for young people to put forward their ideas to help solve some of the biggest global issues. And I think that year the theme was disease and infection. And so my talk was on the value of STEM ambassadors, the value of industry professionals and academics engaging young people, because they are the future of STEM and the future scientists, and the importance of giving them the confidence and opportunities to develop the skills to become people in STEM. So it kind of touched upon my journey and sort of why the work of the British Science Association was so important, and then also it was kind of a call to action, I suppose, in some ways. It was like, please come and join us because this competition was amazing. And yeah, that was really, really fun. I think that was the largest audience I've spoken to. I think it was almost 1,000 people. So I was pretty scared. Yeah, I was pretty scared before. But it was one of those things where it was like, I just can't say no. I guess meeting Bill Gates was a highlight for sure.
I was going to ask if you got to meet Bill. That's pretty cool, surely.
Yeah, definitely. So that was a pretty cool opportunity. And the competition went really well as well.
Pardon, sorry?
The competition went really well as well. Some of the
excellent
submissions were pretty impressive.
Yeah, wow. You've done quite a lot. I mean, you participated in the BBC Digital Innovation Series and appeared on BBC Women's Hour discussing women in STEM, which obviously we touched on earlier. How did that come about, and what was that like?
So the digital innovation, they were running a campaign where they were looking for, I suppose, I mean, I don't see myself as one, but they were looking for role models. I
think you're definitely a role model at this point if you've done all these things and you've been nominated for the award. So let's take that.
Thank you. Yeah, so they were looking for role models who were interested in innovation and discussing the importance of it. And so that came off. So I think I mentioned I was a workshop facilitator with a tech company, so Technology Will Save Us. So at the time, they were looking at how can we use technology and harness it to make it fun, so young people can learn about STEM and enjoy it at the same time. So that video was really cool in the sense that I could talk about the work that I was doing and being able to go into classrooms and sometimes just sessions in youth centres and kind of play with plasticine and Play-Doh and get kids to put together circuits, or like get them to learn about solar panels and how solar panels work and how we can use them to grow plants, That was quite fun. And then the digital hour was just, there's a lot of fantastic women in STEM and the community is so supportive. And so one of the women that I know, Jess Wade, she reached out to me and said, do you want to do this? Like, is this something you'd be interested? And I think you can't really say no to the Women's Hour. So
no, absolutely not.
So that was really cool. Just being able to talk about the value of STEM and also just what got me inspired and where I'm hoping to head forward, and that was with Rachel Caldicott, who was also talking about some of the work that organisations do for STEM and diversity.
Amazing. It's great to hear that the community of women in STEM is so supportive. That's brilliant. I mean, you set up a STEM club in your old school, which is impressive. I don't think anything I set up in school is still lasting. Is that still going?
Yeah, pretty much. There's loads of opportunities that, so once we had finished our DT competition, what we wanted to do is to get teams entering the competition yearly. And so whilst I was at sixth form, with the support of my DT teachers, we ran a couple of competitions for younger students to get involved with. So I think the highlight for me is Dulux were running a Smarter Spaces competition where you had to redesign a classroom. And so I put together a team of girls who basically redesigned the design and technology room. And then they won the £5,000 prize to renovate it with their design. So
Wow.
that was pretty cool for me.
That's like changing rooms for the science lab.
Yeah, well, yeah. So like they managed to renovate some of the walls and get it into tip-top shape. So that was quite fun. And just seeing how they went through the exact same journey I did. You know, they had this crazy idea and then they modeled it and then they planned it and then they thought about the logistics and then they were like, okay, this is what it looks like now. And I think being able to give that back was quite fun. And so, yeah, I think that STEM club now, wherever we can, my design and technology teachers are still offering up these opportunities to the students at the school.
Brilliant.
And I think the work that we do is important, yeah, because there's been a literal uptake in people who choose STEM careers. And I really do think that's down to the STEM club that's within the school.
Fantastic. And it's great to have those sort of tangible results. Did you see a great sense sort of achievement from them when they started with an idea, seeing it through to fruition? Because often when you are younger, I think maybe adults forget this, once you're busy around doing your whole life and, in theory, you've got control over your life. When you're younger, there's not as many opportunities where you take something from an idea and put it into practice. Because usually as a kid, somewhere along the way, there's a problem,
Yeah.
Support, finances, logistics, time, whatever. Did they have a real sense of achievement after that?
I think they did, yeah. I definitely did. And I think for them, being able to say, the DT room looks the way it does now because of me, because of these ideas that I had, I think was a really good confidence boost for a lot of them. Because I think you're right, up until that point, probably the best experience of engineering you might have is Lego.
Which is a good experience.
Which is a great experience, definitely. But I think being able to see in a real life context what STEM skills can do, I think was hugely massively beneficial for them, and I was really proud of them as well.
When you were younger, have you ever come across Meccano?
I did, yeah, I did.
Because it seemed to be going out of fashion, and I'm a fair bit older than you, but my dad had it. My dad's a mechanical engineer, makes sense. And he loved Meccano, and there was like an old battered Meccano kit that me and my brothers used to play with. I've just never seen it since. I wasn't sure if it was still a thing, because that's brilliant for getting kids thinking about that sort of thing.
I think it is a thing, but I don't think I've seen it in a while. I think you're right.
It needs to be brought back. We should start a campaign. Bring back Meccano.
Definitely.
So while at the University of Warwick, you scored highly for a project creating a flat pack go-kart. So you have segued nicely from Meccano to flat pack go-karts here. That sounds right up my street. How was that?
That was pretty fun. I think it's the most fun project I've done at university. So
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, we were literally given a standard plywood sheet, which I think is 1.5 meters by 2 meters, something like that. And they were essentially kind of just like, I want a go-kart out of this. Here's the sheet, build us a great go-kart. And so I was in a team with 4 or 5 who were amazing. And we just kind of put together, it was almost like an origami seat, I guess. So there were slats that were kind of shaped in the profile of a seat, and we stacked them along. And then so that the person could sit in the go-kart. And we kind of, from that seat, designed the rest of it out of that. And I guess, again, it was that having this really crazy idea in our mind to kind of finally seeing it in person for real was pretty cool.
So you actually got to see it made?
Yeah, so we managed to make a scale model of it that actually worked. So that was pretty cool. Again, it was just kind of thinking about, if I were a company to build this, how would we build it? What are some of the problems we might come across? And then working through those problems was really enjoyable. And I think the biggest thing about engineering is that you most of the time don't work by yourself.
No.
You're always working in a team. And so I've really enjoyed the teamwork that I've had the group projects that I've been in whilst at uni.
I think that's actually a bit of a key message, really, because some of my own probably slightly biased thoughts about engineering, you do sort of picture yourself sat in a lab by yourself, you know, and so I think the discussions of teamwork are really interesting to people that perhaps might have real potential in the STEM industry, but perhaps they think they're more social and that, you know, they wouldn't like that work environment, but clearly they could.
Yeah, definitely.
Fascinating. It is interesting, isn't it? You said something earlier about like media representations. I mean, my first thought is always things like the Big Bang Theory, where these people have these completely unattainable jobs that are sort of a bit of a joke. And you think, oh, you know, nobody can ever sort of, you know, get there and do that. But of course, like you say, there is a process. There is a route, there is a way.
Yeah,
and they're just people like everybody else.
definitely.
Very intelligent people, but still people. So kind of my last question at this point, really, but a bit of a big one. Plans for the future. So is there a dream job or a working situation? I mean, obviously it's all laid out in front of you. What would you like?
Sounds like a buffet, Vic. There's so much. My biggest thing is I'd really like to travel. So I think there are some major engineering projects coming up. And obviously in the UK alone, we've kind of had HS2, Crossrail. So I'd love to be able to travel and see how major engineering projects are coordinated and how they're put together. So, because I think people kind of forget things like the Shard. It started off as a drawing on a piece of paper, and now it's this ridiculously huge building. So I'd like to be working in a company that's working towards a project like that. But I'm really open. Again, Industry 4.0, I could end up in something really techy. I'd love to still be a STEM ambassador, so that's my biggest thing. So I start a new job at the end of this month, but I'm kind of looking, where can I go and help out with STEM clubs?
That's brilliant. That's really admirable.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoy working with young people, and I think it keeps you on your toes, I guess. And I'd like to be my own boss at one point.
Yes.
I think that's like the major. I just like to be working for myself at one point, but in what, I have not a clue. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing. Like, it's okay to not be sure. And I hope it's okay to not be sure.
Absolutely, especially when you're still a student. I mean, you know, hopefully you've got a very long, very successful career ahead of you, and there'll be time for that. You know, everyone's career, as somebody who is a little older than you and has done different things, everyone's career does meander, and as long as it's going in roughly the direction that you want, I just say enjoy the ride, really. And I hope in terms of travel that you get somewhere slightly more exciting than HS2, because that's basically Birmingham. So I'm hoping you get somewhere fabulously glamorous abroad. But
Thank you.
it has been wonderful to talk to you, Floriane. I have really, really enjoyed that. So thank you ever so much for chatting to us today.
Thank you, David.
And thank you for watching. And please do remember to share the link from this webinar. Until next time, it's goodbye. And we look forward to finally being able to celebrate the Engineering Talent Awards later this year. So thank you, everybody, including you, Floriane. Bye-bye.
Bye.